They administrative monsters who attacked me and tortured me as an American flag that they wanted to burn alive as a witch, who don't approve of congressional processes determining what we should teach, and don't want to go about teaching what they believe through um, amenable introduction of reform through PTA and public curriculum, have accused me, somewhat logically in their own view, of inciting America's enemies. Because after all, they implanted a neuroplasm to make me confused, and so America is the enemy within. All very reasonable, huh? I picked up one of my files. It's not particularly well organized, but I thought I'd go through some of the questions that have raised about the veracity of the idea that oligarchical councils operated behind the scenes on all sides, including behind the scenes in the so-called axis of evil, came up with certain agreements about how to continue the fossil fuel industry's grip by promotion of a deluge and augment this with things like the COVID pepper spray. And for raising this question, I've been told that I'm the illogical one because I believe that Lenin was not really killed, Reagan was not really shot, and that it was a cover story for the murder of JFK. And a script called the Texas School Book, which is the master narrative we are told that we must adopt. And to establish my concern, I call attention to this picture of Diamanda Galus over here. Diamanda Galus was standing before the World Trade Center with a stiletto. She is behind the claim that the script implicates me in framing Reagan and negligence in the murder of John Lennon, which stood as a symbol for the AIDS victims. And this is the secret society of Central Intelligence. John Stockwell used to follow me around on my birthday. He was from the CIA. And Peter Gabriel wrote to me for a long time. So we know that that makes the fact that Cliff Robertson went in a private plane above the World Trade Centers when they were crashed, and the release of anthrax, patriotic. One can only be filled with tears of love, slavery for old glory that we were attacked on 9/11 and anthrax was released. After all, it was holy war in defense of holy Reagan and holy Lenin. And we're told that this is simply the law of the land. And if we have curiosity as to who Marina Oswald was and what really happened to Dulles, we are boring. We are people who haven't moved on. We are people, little boys in girls' clothing. There's something the matter with us. our letters to Courtney Kennedy should be pursued and delivered with the murder of other Kennedys. Because, as you know from your studies of Demo DeJohn, it's the Kennedy doll that sucked. It was a liberal white suck doll who dared to raise questions about the social studies of Europe and how they weighed in on a problematic visual series of components that we find in the love slavery to Her Majesty's Empire and royal class led by the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. This woman, this little girl here, is in a Shinto shrine outfit, symbolic of Japan. Her name is Rosemary Willis. And notice the mysterious bloody racing glove and the striped doll on the cover of Sgt. Pepper's. They blew his mind out in a car, they used to say on that album. So what gives that there's a star of the script was a fat Italian girl who seduced the American symbol of liberalism. And as you can see, Lenin used the image of a fat Italian girl both in the script and in Magical Mystery Tour. What can magic and mystery have to do with the thought of pulling a Houdini? Bush lived in Kennebunkport. I used to have a model ship made by inmate Maine State Prison. Notice the coastline. He lived in Kennebunkport, and the girl's name was Dee Dee. Kennedy deport is encrypted in the mindset of the Texas school book. And supposedly, I am inciting dangerous questions and daring to propose nefarious ideas about what the answers could be. This takes place November 22nd, 1963. The movie, The Odessa File, has Oswald morphing into the name Ronald. Oswald and Ronald, November 22nd, 1963. And now, every day I get more prompts about the climate crisis. These are the people who are going to save the world, the apostles of the fossil fuel industry, who must save the world without any change to the iron fist of heavy metal. You know, I'm remorseful about the loss of JFK because on his last tour, he came through Tacoma. It was a tour of the interior. It was his idea that we should be preserving the interior and taking cognizance of Native American teachings about the ecology. But other people are more interested in what you can get for that picture that's not them. So it takes a little audacity to tell me that I'm off topic when the people who are in charge of the climate change crisis are also in charge of policy. You know, the double entendre of double fantasy had in the script Flip out talking to Mark, which is like Mark Twain, or Mark David Chapman. Mark Mann Sane was Dee Dee's brother's name. Both have Mark Mann in their names. And you have lookalikes of Sir Richard, Queen Elizabeth's cousin, next to Reagan and Lennon when they claimed they were shot, and Richard howling that the letters he sent me should be taken as proof of the justice in seducing and torturing me. Now, this kind of thing seems to have been borrowed by the people who did this. I'm not trying to be a hooligan. I realize that peep show psychology from the prison ward is constantly badgering people that I look at online cinema. You know, my life is at stake. They have afflicted me with endocrine problems and neurological disorders that require me to use home stimulation models in order to process my bodily fluids. That's not something that they should be turning into an instigation to justify snuff film and assassination. All hotwired around the law. They don't want to discuss this in a public library. Now, Leroy Blevins, before he died, detected in the Zapruder film something very peculiar that had been overlooked even by the millions of people who saw Oliver Stone's film, which was the shadow over here of a sniper on the roof. And they confirmed that from the shadow that it was the Daltex building from where missiles have long been suspected. So what we see is what you would call a Hollywood notary public operating discreetly in the Seminole framing. And what went on with the guillotine of the Stemmons Freeway sign that crosses, that draws Kennedy out of sight, it draws a curtain for what happened behind the screen. And that's where we get these letters and where these poachers come from. King Edward came here about 10 years before this picture was taken to Wall Street to discuss the Church of England being in charge of Hollywood. And Uvalde peeped Dee Dee in a place called Clem Shack. Now, I have been concerned about this for a very long time, and I did want to work on ecology. This is what interfered with ecology, not for my doing, but because they insisted on doing this. They insisted that this must be addressed. That's John Wayne with Lee Harvey Oswald. Wayne starred in a weird film called The Green Berets with George Takei. If anybody could get beamed up, it's the master plot of John Lennon. And sure enough, it would be just like Starting Over, appears with a look-alike of the girl who wrote the Texas School Book in an Ayn Rand film, whose specialty in science fiction was about the disappearance to protect prime movers. And in the script, they say, only two people would know. Only two people would know. And you would be one of them. Would know what? Clearly, more than two people knew about the Texas school book. Jennifer Rubin lived across the street from Kansas State where I was gassed. Only two people would know means only two people would dare to suspect what they did. The walrus who kept silent for everybody by making it appear mission impossible, and the person on whom they impinged the parochial agenda. Parochial savage wanted us on a crash course based on revenge into deluge, because the fascists had said, if we can't control the world, then we will destroy the world. And all I'm doing is saying what we need to understand is who these people are and how they are operating in order to save ourselves as surely as we need to address the environment. We need, if we're going to become a solidarity movement at the Congress of Parties, we need to question how it came to pass that we were asked to keep silent about how this was done, by who, and why they keep refusing to behave in a sane, intelligent way. Maybe they don't want to behave in a sane, intelligent way, and we have to be very careful about that. Inside the car with JFK, Hollywood's most daring bedroom scene. Notice the trajectory into the skull. The trajectory into the skull suggests, very strongly supports, a theory that emerged about the time of Leroy Blevins, a question why Jackie Kennedy seems to be holding something under JFK's chin. If you watch very closely and study it frame by frame, you can see that she actually seems to be holding a weapon and looks at Governor Connally to make sure that he is not looking. And a letter has emerged to Alan Dulles, who even members of the New York Times have concluded were involved in the murder of JFK, in which he talks about hidden weapons. This is to JFK, the Reitman's pal with a full rangy figure with a gray machine gun concealed in his tennis racket. All this stuff about vital secrets. From Jackie Kennedy to Alan Dulles. So, who are we being hustled by? For what ends are we being hustled by them? It's part of the central fabric of the question, where are we going and how are we going to go about getting there? She said in the Texas school book, I'm about to send you ESP signals. The message from these parochial people is that all is a fight club over women's virginity, and the Church of England stands as the champion that we must outlaw criminal laws and execute anyone who dares to have private consensual lovemaking between unmarried partners exclusively. That's the message of this. They clocked the entire thing to a sadistic enterprise known as that they called Two Virgins, which was clearly a no-no from Mark Mark. Now, if we have to accept this because of the Trump ultimatum, it comes down the highway from the Zookeeper people. I think we should do so openly and discriminately, saying that we have digested the information and understand that the ultimatum comes from the criminally insane. And we will do our level best to integrate awareness of this sad situation into our public discourse for the purposes of suitable reform. Suitable reform in these matters are inclusive to our condition as people needing to come together in COP27. It is not a mandate to follow the Casper Houdini of John Lennon's friendly ghost in embracing the eternal return of the Fuhrer, for heaven's sakes. The nuclear bomb is beyond the pale. Nobody should have one. We should all be pushing to abolish it. But look at the sun. Look at our condition. Look at the heat that we live with. In October in Tacoma, it's hot. This is unheard of climate change. People who want to live in a fantasy about the New Testament and believe the deluge has come back will no doubt celebrate the wisdom of D.W. Griffith, King Edward, and the fantasy of the second Disneyland in the sky that was inaugurated on November 22nd, 1963, I believe, in Florida. I don't think anything is to be gained by denying that JFK was executed in an Axis revenge and that Her Majesty's Empire has pushed this with the help of Russia through the Ouspensky crowd like Robert Fripp as divine remedy for the abominations of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay, that's what we have to live with. That's what we have to accept. I think it should be done openly in a forum of suitable reform. I don't think anything is to be gained by throwing away the history books and saying we will never speak of any of this. It has nothing to do with lack of patriotism.